the Indian Prime Minister will soon be visiting China. And I said surprisingly because many here in India were not expecting, given the clashes we had on the border between the two countries a few years ago. And the Indian Prime Minister has shown the diplomatic deftness to see if he can strike some sort of a pleasant chord with China, perhaps putting to use the fact that US, after years of keeping Pakistan at bay, is now again letting Pakistan ingratiate itself. Their chief of army, Asim Munir, will soon be visiting the US again and will be meeting Trump within days of his last meeting with him. So what do you make of this move, and how far do you think the relationship that you were talking about between India and China, how big can it grow, given there are definitely some trust issues between the two countries?
Of course, but India and China together constitute almost 40% of the world population. They're the two great nations of the world, the largest countries by far in the world. Remember, the United States is less than a fourth of the population of these two countries. Both are growing very dynamically. Both have cutting edge technology, world leading scientists, space efforts, and advances in artificial intelligence and digital economy and so forth. The relationship of the two is extremely important, in my view, for building a true multipolar, and I'll use another word, multilateral world. Multilateral, I mean, not just that power is distributed, but that there's actually an international rule of law, not the dictates of the President of the United States by executive decree, but actually international governance. If the two largest countries of the world got together on this, this would transform the world to a multilateral world. My advice to the Chinese has been support India to be the sixth permanent member of the UN Security Council. This is the most glaring defect of the UN right now. India is a superpower, the most populous country in the world. We need India in the UN Security Council for the legitimacy of global governance. So I'm urging that China support India as the sixth permanent member of the UN Security Council. India is the only country in the world that has this completely unambiguous claim to joining as a permanent member of the Security Council. And I think India's place in the UN Security Council would help to secure multilateralism and global peace. So this is a first point. But then I think that has to be based on rebuilding trust between the two countries. And here, what's the really fundamental barrier to trust? Of course, it is the lines of borders in the Himalayas. And I don't want to oversimplify this, but I do want to say one point, which is that the border in the Himalayas were never properly adjudicated, of course, between the two countries. And the line that ostensibly was drawn as usual by some British mid-level officer around 1907, McMahon, who never visited the place, and he just drew lines on a map. And this has led to more than a century of conflict because when India gained independence and Prime Minister Nehru first opined on this, at least as I understand, and I stand to be corrected, so I'm not an expert in this, but basically independent India took the McMahon line and said that's the line. But yes, I have a theorem about the world, which is that all problems in the world go back to Britain. This is my own view. Almost every problem you see, including the India-China problem, goes back to Britain. This is true in Crimea. It goes back to the British Crimean War. It's the Middle East. It goes back to the British mandate over Palestine and so forth. Britain made nonstop trouble, in my view, because it was the dominant empire of the world in the 19th century, and empires make trouble. In any event, all of this is to say, China and India should resolve this one issue because there's so much more at stake than this one issue. And for both countries, what's really at stake is a new world order in which they both have security, have sovereignty, and have a major say in the world, because we're past the 1945 settlement, when India wasn't even a country then, when China was in civil war, and when the United States basically set the terms to an extent together with the Soviet Union at the time, which also, of course, doesn't exist anymore. But we need a new framework, and India and China are the two countries that can put that peacefully into place. And so I'm very encouraged by this upcoming meeting. It's extremely important, but it's pragmatically important as well. What is Donald Trump really doing right now with these tariffs? If you cut through everything and through all the rhetoric, the high tariffs are put on the BRICS countries, on Brazil. Russia is not only tariffs, it's just completely sanctioned. India, China, South Africa. Why? Because these are major countries, and the United States resents major countries. Whatever blandishment, whatever claim of strategic this and that, whatever quad, blah, 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 the United States does not like big countries because they challenge America's delusional claim to hegemony. And that's why the big countries actually have a special role to play right now to help the United States down gently. Okay, you're very nice. We like you. It's okay. But you don't run the world. And that's why the BRICS really is important right now to hang together. All of them have been targeted by Trump, not coincidentally. This is the point. Because they're big. Not because of anything that they do, but because they're big. The whole U.S. animus to China is not because China is a perfidious country. It's because China's economic growth by 2010 came to be seen in the American political elite as a threat to U.S. primacy. Similarly with Russia. Russia's just too big for the Anglo-Saxon eyes. This has been a campaign since 1840 of the UK, and the US joined that campaign from 1945 onward to diminish Russia because it's 17 million square kilometers. It's a vast, vast continental power. So the US doesn't like big countries, but the big countries today really are the pillars of a true world system for the 21st century. So they need to say to the United States, stop bullying us, stop giving demands, stop giving ultimatums, stop your claims of secondary sanctions, stop your unilateral tariff actions, and behave and cooperate. And then we can have a normal, peaceful world.